Hi guys, and welcome to my vlog on skills and capacities in the weight room. This vlog examines the skills and capacities needed to effectively perform a movement task. Specifically, we will look at how deficiencies in skill or capacity affects the outcome of a movement task. In examining this, we will consider two common lower limb exercises, the barbell back squat and the rear foot elevated split squat. Insofar as an athlete being skilled, this means they are able to perform the correct movement pattern in an efficient and timely manner. A capacity, on the other hand, is our ability to express key qualities that enable us to perform a movement. Examples include muscle force expression, joint mobility, or stability. Here we will consider ways to identify skill or capacity deficiencies and present effective interventions for these deficiencies. Here we can see an athlete performing the back squat, and it is immediately obvious that she is unable to achieve much depth as the femur struggles to break parallel. She also exhibits excessive forward trunk lean as a compensatory method in order to achieve more depth, while also overextending through the lumbar spine. However, it's arguable that she demonstrates a good movement pattern. From a side angle, we can see she initiates the squat by sitting back, while from a front view we can see good use of hip external rotation in driving the knees out. The forward trunk lean and inability to achieve depth may therefore be a result of some mobility issues around the hip musculature and the ankles. In observing hip range of motion, an active straight leg raise shows room for improvement with 61 and 64 degrees on each leg. Ankle range of motion using the knee to wall test also shows limitations as she struggles to reach 5 centimeters on each ankle. She can address these mobility restrictions using some simple hip flexor stretches and banded mobility work for the ankles, as well as foam rolling, paying close attention to the calves and TFL. As well as this, spending some time practicing the front squat would be beneficial before progressing to the back squat. The anterior shift of the weight will help her to keep a more upright trunk, and in time, she can start to achieve more depth. In addition, the pole squat exercise provides the counterbalance for a larger range of motion whilst being mindful of maintaining a neutral spine. Spending time in the bottom position of the pole squat is also a good technique to mobilize the hips and ankles. This athlete is a good example of someone who lacks adequate skill in back squatting. While he achieves a little more depth than the previous example, his movement is less optimal. A quick look at his hip range of motion shows he has adequate mobility as he reaches close to 90 degrees during an active straight leg raise. From a lateral view, we can see he initiates the squat with his knees. Whilst allowing the knee to translate forward is a good strategy to keep the centre of mass within the base of support, initiating the movement with the knees is a common error that limits the ability to achieve more depth, as the end range of motion of the ankle is reached very early. We can also see his heels come off the ground, which is most likely a consequence of his knee initiation. Loss of heel contact poses a number of risks, such as loss of balance, as well as making the knee and ankle more vulnerable. Some simple cues, such as sit back and maintain foot contact, should be enough for him to start to learn better back squatting technique. As well as this, a short-term solution would be to place some small plates under his heels. This will buy him some extra ankle dorsiflexion whilst he learns the new movement pattern. In practicing a movement without the heel raise, it is advisable for this athlete to adopt a wide stance to ensure the foot maintains contact with the ground. Here we can see an athlete performing a rear foot elevated split squat. It's clear he displays poor control and stability throughout his movement. The biggest concern is the excessive hip adduction and in a loaded condition, he is more stable as the added weight lowers his centre of mass. However, from a rear view, we can see a clear lateral pelvic tilt on the front leg side. So what exactly is causing this movement pattern? Well, with his setup being consistent with the technical model, it is not so much his inability to execute the skill itself, but rather he has a lack of strength in the muscles of the hip. This is confirmed by his inability to maintain a level pelvis during a simple Trendelenburg's test which indicates weakness in the abductor muscles. This athlete would therefore benefit from banded exercises that specifically strengthen the abductors. Again, we can see poor control of the hip and knee during the banded goblet squat, so spending some time on these less intense glute and hip specific exercises should give him some more strength and stability to allow him to progress to the elevated split squat. In practicing the elevated split squat, he can address the lateral pelvic tilt by holding a dumbbell on just the trail leg side, which will activate the hip adductors and increase the pelvic tilt torque. It would not be advisable for him to hold dumbbells of equal weight in both hands, as the weight on the lead leg side would counterbalance some of the load and contribute to more lateral pelvic tilt. Once he has addressed the pelvic tilt, he can add more load to the exercise with dumbbells in each hand, but keeping a higher weight on the trail leg side to increase the frontal plane overload on the lead leg. This athlete shows he has not got the correct motor pattern to effectively perform the skill. We can rule out capacity problems as he shows good stability in the hips and knees throughout descent and ascent, and he has the strength to achieve good depth with a moderate load. However, from a side angle, we can see he has an excessive anterior trunk lean. You can see after being cued to keep upright that he immediately jerks forwards again, and this is caused by the hip flexors. It should be noted that he has been practicing this exercise for 2 years now, and so it is most likely that this suboptimal movement strategy can be put down to adaptation in response to limited strength and stability around the hip musculature in the past. Given that he has now addressed those restrictions, simply cueing this athlete to keep as upright as possible at the top position and to slowly descend should correct this error, at least in the initiation phase of the movement. It may take more practice for him to maintain this position throughout the entire movement over many reps. Introducing a regressive exercise such as the weighted lunge would give him the opportunity to practice staying upright in a less challenging environment where a bilateral stance offers more stability. You can see here he maintains a more upright trunk, but this may well be challenged with increased load, so you will have to work on a bilateral lunge for some time before progressing to the rear foot elevation. Skills and capacities underpin our quality of movement. Being skillful in an exercise such as the squat requires thoughtful practice to determine the most optimal movement strategy. Developing the capacity to express key qualities such as force, mobility, and stability enhances the athlete's ability to be skillful. Further, being skillful in a movement will afford athletes more quality in their training, thereby enhancing their capacities. Therefore, coaches should be aware that there will often be crossover between skills and capacities. Paying close attention to the athlete's training history and current training status is fundamental in acquiring movement skills.